welcome to today's class. Today we will be talking about the concept of coding and decoding. In the previous class on alphabet series, we have already talked about how to work out alphabets. We have talked about alphabets and number series and a mix of alphabet and number series. So what does basically coding and decoding? Coding and decoding basically means if I want to talk to someone and I am not saying the exact word what it is, okay, I have a code language between me and my friend. Okay, I use that code language so that no one else can understand what I am speaking. Okay, for example, to say that I would be absent tomorrow for the school, I can say that going. Okay, so this phrase going just indicate that I won't be coming for school tomorrow. Okay, so that's a kind of code language between me and my friend. So in this class, we will be talking about the various coding decoding methods. So there are four basic methods by which we can code and decode any information. So we'll first understand what are the four basic methods. The first is code and key. Okay. The next is letter coding. The next is letter rearrangement. And the last is word parts. Now let me explain all of these four first. So code and key means if in any language TAP means 1, 2, 3, what would TAT mean? It would be 3, 2, 1. Okay. So what I am doing, I am putting the code for T as 3. Okay, A as 2 and T as 1. And what I am doing is, when it is asked in any other sequence, I would mention these. Now, letter coding is similar to the alphabet series, where, for example, I say it can be one series forward, so M becomes N, and A becomes B, D becomes E. So, if MAD becomes NDE, what would be sad? So I can say S, jump one step forward, so it would become T, A again jumping one step forward, so B, and next to D comes E, so it would be TBE. So that is what is letter coding. Letter rearrangement is nothing but much more simpler than all of these. So what I am doing is, I am saying Ramesh in any language, okay, becomes, I am inversing the way I am writing. So I am rearranging the letters. So I have said it becomes S, then S, then E, then M, A and R. So what would Suresh become? So what I am doing is, I am inversing the order in which I am writing. So I have the same set of letters only. I am not using any other codes for the language. I am not using a code and key for them. What I am doing is simply rearranging them again. So Suresh in any language would become H, then you have S, E, R, then U and S. And what is word part? Word part basically means if I have this word, okay, and I say from Aflatun, Tun becomes the, okay, and I have other words, okay, in this SUN becomes RAT, okay. So if I have any next word which is named as Santan, what would be the code for it? So what I am doing, from this word Aflatun, I am using Tun and I am coding it as DOR. From Sunapul, I am taking SUN and I am converting that into RAT. So if I have a combination of these two, SUN and TON, what would they become? They would become RAT and then TON becomes DOR. So it would be this. Okay. So in today's class, what we would be doing is, we would be practicing a lot of examples, but we would be focusing on the first three sections, that is code and key, letter coding and letter rearrangement. In the next class on coding decoding, we will be talking more about word problems. So I have the first example for you based on code and key. So for this code and key problem, what you have is, you have a set of keys given and you have a set of code given. Now if I say, you have to find out the code for a word, say example beauty, based on what is given above, what would be the solution? Now in this kind of problem, 90% of the students, what they do is, they get confused between code and key. So intentionally to confuse the students, what I have done is, I have mentioned key below the code. Now what I will do is, so in this series, 90% of the students, when they will first look at it, what they will say, okay, B becomes T. So B should become T, okay, and the answer should start with something from T. So if you have 4 choices given and one of that starts with T, most of the students would not even go forward and solve the question. They'll just say, okay, B becomes T, so the answer should start with T, and that is the correct answer. But in that case, you will get 0 marks. What we are trying to do here is, we are trying to see or read the question properly. Here what is happening, I have mentioned key here and code above it. So B I should take from here and I should see the respective code above it. Okay? It should not be, I should not read the code and then find the key for it. What I am doing is, I have a key and based on that key, I am trying to code that language. Okay? So what I am doing is, B becomes Z. Okay? E becomes, E is here, A is here, U is here and T is here. So you have the word beauty here. So E becomes X, you have A becomes O, U becomes A, and finally you have, U, T and Y. So T becomes B and Y becomes N. So this would be the coding, decoding for the word beauty based on the code given here. Okay, I have, we will practice few more examples based on it. I have a next word, failed. Now let's start with F. So you have, I'll use another color to make it clear. Okay. So you have F here, A here, I here, L here, fail, E and D. Okay, so we'll start with F. F becomes Y. You have A becomes O, I becomes T, L becomes M, E becomes X, and D becomes I. Okay, so this would be the code and key for the word fail. Now I have the last word, that is player. Now what would happen for this? I am using the word F, L, A, I and R. So I'll start with F, that is Y, L, that is M, A, that is O, and finally I, R, that becomes T and W. So these would be the code for the key that is given here. So if I have these words, based on the code and key questions, what would be the exact solutions would be these. Okay, so with this we covered the first section on code and key. Now we will move on to the next section, that is letter coding. In letter coding, what we are trying to do is, we will be practicing again some examples. Now to simplify the examples, we will use the same technique that we have used in the alphabet series. So alphabet series, what we talked was drawing an alphabet line, okay, and mentioning the respective numbers after it. And the next was using the circle of letters. So here, what I am doing is, I am using the circle of letters to solve the questions on letter coding. So if in any language, I have the word Madras, which is coded as, so Madras, the code here for Madras is NDESBT. Okay, what would be the code for Bombay? So in this question, what I am doing is, M becomes N, So you have M, next is N, A becomes B, D becomes E, okay. You have R becomes S, A again becomes B and S becomes T. So what would be the code for Bombay? So let's solve it for Bombay. For Bombay, B becomes C, okay. So you have two spaces where B is there. A should become B, Y should become Z, okay. O should become P and M should become, the next letter is N. So this would be the letter coding for the word Bombay. If I have a letter coding for Madras, which is given as NBESBT, the letter coding for Bombay would be CPNCBZ, because what I am doing is I am adding one letter in each of these. So A is becoming B, B becomes C, C becomes D, and so on. Okay. So this was the first question that we did under letter coding. Now we have the next question under letter coding. If TAP becomes SZO, what would freeze become? Okay. So in this, what I am doing is T becomes S. So I am moving backwards. So T is becoming S, A is becoming Z. So since I have a circle of letters, I can easily understand that it's going back. And P becomes O. So P becomes O here. So what would freeze become? So F would go back. So F becomes E. R becomes go back. So it becomes Q. You have 3 E. And for all of the E you will go back. So it becomes D. So you have D, D, and again D, and in the middle you have Z. So what would Z become? Z, for Z if I go back, it becomes 1. Okay. So in coding decoding, what was done in the first example was I am moving one step forward. In the next example, I am moving one step back. Okay. And since in this question we are taking one step back and A, so if I am not drawing circle of letters, if I say A becomes Z, I would be highly confused. So just to avoid that confusion, what we are doing is we are drawing a circle of letters so that we know in the circle before A we have Z, and we can solve this problem very easily. Okay, we will be practicing one more question on letter coding. Okay, and that will be based on the alphabet line that we discussed in the previous class on alphabet series. So under alphabet line, what we did was, we started with A, okay, and we wrote till Z, and we wrote the consecutive numbers for each of those. So let me just make it here. So you have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Let's say we do it till P, okay, and I have the corresponding numbers here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Now, I have a question where I say math is written as, okay, what should be written as? So in this question, what I am doing is, I have M and the corresponding number for it is 13. So I am writing 13 here. A stands for 1, so 1. And P stands for 16, so I have 16 here. So if I have cap, it should be written as 3. Then AP is the same. So I can say 1 and 1 6. Now some of the students in these kind of questions can get confused because they think that the word MAP is just 3 letters. And for these 3 letters, I have corresponding 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 numbers here. Okay. If for 3 letters, I have 5 numbers here, then for cap also, I should have 5 numbers. Okay. So, from the choices, okay, from the 4 alternatives given, what candidate would do is, they would ignore all the choices which do not have 5 letters. Okay, in that case, this choice which is correct would be ignored. So what is very important here to understand is, in this kind of question we are working with the alphabet line. Okay, and in the previous question we worked with circle of letters. So it's very important to understand what we exactly need to find out. And as we have discussed in the previous class on alphabet series, you need to remember two basic things. From A to M, it's 1 to 13. Okay, 1 to 13. Okay, and from N to Z, it is numbering 14 to 26. Okay, that's the first thing. And the next thing you need to remember in alphabet line is the words adjoint. Okay, that means these words stand for the numbers 5, 10, 15, 20 and 25 on the number line. So if you have any question which is given, since I have given this question, ma'am, I should come to my mind that you ask that M stands for 13. So M stands for 13 based on alphabet line. So I have to do nothing else but to substitute the values for substitute the numbers for the letters. Okay. So this is one kind of question that can be asked based on letter coding. The other type of question that is asked based on letter coding is, if for the word center, okay, I am saying this is the code, okay, and for the word rank, the code is, okay, what would be the code for the word rank? Okay. If this is the question, what I am trying to do here is, in this question, look at the question carefully. Sorry. Just do it. Okay. So what I am trying to do in this question is, if center is written as some numbers, okay, and rank is written as another set of numbers, what would be tag written as? So first of all, I try to find out, okay, T here, okay, it should be 10. Mistake. What I am trying to do is, I am trying to explain you something. So if I form this question, for example, as T, okay, here is the fourth letter, okay, so the fourth number is 1, okay, then R here is 3 and R here again becomes 3. That means if R is 3 in this and R is 3 in this, I can say R is equal to 3 and I can say that this maintains the correct order, which I can also say from looking at the numbers E here and E here. So you have 5 here and 5 here. So E becomes 5, okay, and C becomes 2, N becomes 8, T becomes 1. Under rank, what is happening? R automatically becomes 3 and A and K is written as 10, 4 and 9. So even if I don't know anything about anything else, just based on seeing the above two choices, what I can do is, I can say, since R is common in both of these and the only number which is common in both of these is 3, okay, and for A and K it should be written as 10, 4 and 9. So for A and K, if I write 10, 4 and 9 as it is, and because I can deduce from these two that R which is common in both these, and you have number 3 which is common in both these, so R should be 3, okay, so it's 3 here. So T should be 1 because all of them are arranged in a simple fashion, that is C stands for 2, E stands for 5, N stands for 8, T stands for 1. So here T should be 1. So the answer or the code for tan should be 1, 10, 4 and 9. Okay. So what we are doing in this question is, we are giving codes to each letter. So C becomes 2, E becomes 5, and so on. And similarly, it's for RAM. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to find out the code for 10. So for 10, since in RAM A and K is common, so I use that common phrase as it is. Okay, so 10, 4 and 9 would be used as it is. And for T, I would see the corresponding value here, which is 1. So I'll say it should be 1 here. So that would be the correct answer for these kind of questions. Now we'll be discussing the last set today, which is the letter rearrangement. So let's start with simple problems on letter rearrangement. Okay. So under letter rearrangement, we'll start with a very simple example where I'll say serpent. In English is coded as okay. So if serpent is coded as this, what should be plate written as? Okay. Now there can be numerous ways to solve these kind of questions. So in this question, what we are trying to do first is, I am starting it with T. So first of all, you can say that S becomes T. Okay, so it's a question of letter coding. So if I say S becomes T and it's a question of letter coding, I should move on to the next letter. E becomes N, R becomes E, T remains P. So there is no kind of exact relationship which I can form based on letter coding. So I'll have to ignore the letter coding here and move on to the next option, that is letter rearrangement. So let me try to rearrange serpent. If I try to rearrange serpent, it says it is T N E. So it ceases to be T N E. Then it's P R. So it's P R and E S. So it's E S. So what I'm doing is I am going in a reverse order. So for plate, if I want to go into a reverse order, it should be E U G A L N P. Okay. So this is the first type of letter rearrangement problem where you are given a word. Okay. And what you are doing is you are rearranging that word into a reverse order. So for serpent, I'll start with T. For plate, I'll start with E. And I'll move backwards. Okay, so that's one kind of problem under letter rearrangement. The next kind of problem is, now listen to this problem very carefully. If I have serpent given, okay, and in the question it is given that I reverse this as this, okay, how many letters would remain at exactly the same position? Okay, so what is becoming here is, I need to look at each of these words and see the position of these words. Okay, so let me write the positions above it. So I will say S is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. These are the positions. So T is at the position 7. Now what is becoming here is, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So let me check for each of these. So S is 1 here, S is 7 here. So S cannot be the choice. E is 2 here and 5 here. And here E is 3 and 6. So E also cannot be the choice. Then for R, it is 3 here and 5 here. So R is also not the choice. For P, it's the 4th position here and the 4th position here. So P is the correct letter. Then I look into N. N is 6 here and 2 here. So N cannot be the option. And T is 7 here at the first position here. So T is also not the answer. So in this phrase, serpent, I can say there is only one letter, that's P, which remains at the same position when I am inversing the order. So let me repeat it once again. So if there is a question where you are given given that in any language serpent becomes this. Okay. Which letter or which alphabet would remain at the same position in the reverse order as well? So for this question, what I have to do is, I have to write the respective positions. So for serpent, I have mentioned the positions 1 to 7. And for this code, I have mentioned the position 1 to 7. So what I am doing is, I am seeing which letters would remain at the same position. So letter P is at the 4th position here. And here also letter P remains at the 4th position. So none of these have the same position except letter T. So there is only one letter which would have the same position in the code and the decoded language, in the decoded and the coded language. Okay. So this was another question that can be formed out of letter rearrangement problems. Okay, we practice 2 or 3 more examples of letter rearrangement. So let's move on to the next example in letter rearrangement. So this type of rearrangement was a very simple rearrangement where what we did was just reversing the order of the letters. In the next, what I am doing is, in any language, if I am saying cigarette becomes okay, what would demonstration become? Can you apply some other logic in this? I'll first try to see. C becomes G, I remains I. Okay, so there is letter coding is not working. Okay, that's for sure. Let me try to inverse the order. E, T, T. So that's not working. Okay. So what I'll do is, I'll try to observe it very carefully and see if there is something hidden in it. So if I say CIG becomes GIC. So what I am doing is, these 3 words are inversing their order. ARE becomes ERA. So these 3 words are reversing the order. And finally, these 3 words are also reversing the order. Okay. So it becomes ATP. Okay. So in this type of problem, what is happening is, I am dividing the complete word into triplets of alphabets, and those triplets within themselves are getting reversed. Okay. So if I have this question and I want to find out the code for this, what would it be? I will break it into triplets. But after breaking it into triplets, you have one letter that is left. Now what to do that with that one letter? I leave it as it is and I will inverse or reverse the order for the remaining. So DEM becomes MED. ONS will become SNO. You have TRA would become ART. TIO would become OIT, and N will remain as such. So this would be the letter rearrangement solution for demonstration. If I am given that cigarette in any code language becomes this, what would the word demonstration become? So demonstration would become this in the code language. And we have a final problem that we will be doing today, that is on letter rearrangement again. So in a language, if I say cry becomes, okay, what would get become? So what I am trying to do here is, I will first look at through the 4 alternatives given. And for example, in the 4 alternatives, if I see all the letters start with M, then that means I have to do nothing but keep the M as it is. So first, if I look at the problem, there are 3 words here and there are 4 words in the coded language. Now of these 4 words, if I ignore M, the remaining 3 words are the same words that are given in the question. That's cry. But the only thing is, I have changed the arrangement. So in this, what is the arrangement is, rather than going into a reverse order or breaking it into sets, what I am doing is, I am taking the middle term first. Okay. Then the last term and then the first term. So what is happening is R comes first, then Y and then C. Okay. So you have R, Y and C that comes up as it is, and Y is there and M here. And would there be an M in the choice also, or there should be some other option? That totally depends on the alternative. So for example, if I have an alternative which all of the alternatives have M as a choice, then automatically I have to keep M as it is and jumble the rest of the words. So I'll place E at the first position. Okay. Then I'll place T and finally I'll place G. Okay. So this should be the correct solution for the word get. Okay. But in case you are not given M as a choice in the four alternatives, you have a choice, say M, O, S and T. What would you do? Okay. Then in that case, what is the simplest way to solve this? If the first letter is all one out of these four in the four alternatives, what you have to do is, you have to just look into the problem and see if you can find out any relationship from M based on these three letters. For these three letters, I have no relationship for M, and M looks independent. So for the choice also, M would be independent. But now, let me change the code for it. In the code language, okay, if I say the solution for this problem is R, Y and C. So what I am doing is, I am starting with R and taking the next word Y and then finally C. But what comes after R is S. Okay. So there is the relationship of the first word that is here. So this type of problem, what happens is a combination of letter arrangement and letter coding. So I am using the code here and I am using the rearrangement here. So this is a typical problem which combines both letter coding and letter arrangement. So if this becomes this, what would get become? So first of all, let me just convert these three words. So it should be E, then T and then G. Okay. So these would be the rearrangement of these three letters. Now what comes after E would come here. So after E, if I say it's A, B, C, D, E, F, then that means F should come here and this would be the correct answer. Okay. Now to make it once again clear, what I am doing is I am rearranging these letters. I am moving the last middle letter at the first position, then the last letter and the first letter. So I am rearranging these three letters, and when I have rearranged these letters, after R, what there comes is S. So I am putting S in front of it. So after E, what comes is F. So I am putting F in front of this. So this is a simple problem where I am trying to merge letter coding and letter rearrangement issues. Okay. And in the previous question, what we did was, I was coding cry as M-R-Y-C, and that M does not have any relationship with anything else. So I can say in the alternatives also, M would remain as M, and we'll jumble the remaining three alphabets here. Okay. So with this, we cover the problems that are based on code and key, letter coding and letter rearrangement. In the next class, we will be covering coding decoding problems where we will try to solve word part problems in coding and decoding.